Do you believe in miracles? Well, if you don't, you might want to reconsider your belief system because the blue light galactic beings, star beings, are sharing with me that we can start to expect miracles happening more and more often for us. And so for me, I wanted to know, what do miracles have to do with the blue light? What does miracles have to do with blue light star beings? And what do miracles have to do with blue light code? So since we're going to be talking a little bit about all three of those things, I thought I would wear my little blue gray shirt that I think mimics chains of light codes. So I thought this is a really great topic, especially since I've been writing some notes about the winter solstice that's going to be coming up on December 21st. And I was told that the theme, what the name of that particular solstice group reading is going to be, the Blue Star of Miracles. And so I thought, all right, I'm really curious about that. So I thought, well, I'm going to put that on the back burner because that's a couple of months away from now. But it was like, nope, today I need to start talking about miracles. So I just want to let you know that I was kind of asking people around me, like, what do you think a miracle is? I was asking my students, what do you think a miracle is? How do you define a miracle? So for any of you who are listening right now, I would like for you to pause the recording for just a minute, to sit for just a few seconds and just sit with, how would you define a miracle? Like, what is your belief system around miracles? How do you define miracles? What does a miracle mean to you? Or maybe even, have you ever experienced a personal miracle? And then go ahead and write that in the comment section, and then go ahead and start the recording again. So for those of you who stopped the recording for a moment, welcome back. So I looked up to see in the dictionary, what does a miracle, how does the dictionary define a miracle? I wish you could see how I wrote this on my piece of paper. So it said how the Bible defines miracles. So here it defines, sorry, I'm laughing because it is so outrageous. All right. An event of God's providence in which the outcome goes beyond what the natural properties of the created things involved could have produced. So I wrote in capital letters, huh? Like, really? There's a lot of miracles in the Bible, and that's the best that dictionary could come up with? So I thought I would go for it again, and I looked up another one, and I kind of really like this one. A miracle is an occurrence, usually all at once, above nature and above man, that is an intervention of power that is not limited by the laws of matter or mind. All right, let me say that again. A miracle is an occurrence, all at once, above nature and above man, that is an intervention of a power that is not limited by the laws of matter or mind. A miracle is a power that can interrupt fixed laws that govern our movements, our supernatural powers. All right. So for me, I've been fortunate enough to actually witness events that are just like that described, where it was supernatural, it was beyond man, it was beyond the fixed laws that govern our movements, it was not limited by the laws of matter, and it was an occurrence that occurred all at once, suddenly. And so as a nurse, I never thought anything like that was possible. So I'm definitely going to share some stories with you. But I did ask, what does this blue light have to do with anything around miracles? And why is it that the blue galactic star beings are expressing expect miracles? That in this time frame, especially in these next 3 months, this quite intense time of rapid acceleration of growth and vibration and frequency and light codes and photonic plasma that's nourishing and uplifting and activating of high levels of wisdom and knowledge. I was like, okay, what does that have to do with miracles? And so, but the other piece I wanted to add at the end of the sentence, for the next 3 years, we're going to have a heightened level of miracles. Now, what the blue beings of light told me was, we're going to grow into, as the frequency goes up, it's going to become more of a natural way of probabilities, not just the possibility of miracles, but we're going to grow in that, raising that percentage of outcome to a more higher level that is a more probability that you may experience a miracle than it being a rare event. So I asked them, how is this possible? And they said, well, because the frequency now, as we have Pluto, who's still in Capricorn, but it's about ready to move into Aquarius on November 19th, that as the frequency goes up, and they're talking about this frequency of Pluto in Aquarian being more of a horizontal, multi-dimensional expression of light rather than the linear up and down, good or bad dichotomies, black or white. Because we're going more horizontal, we're going to be able to bring in many, many frequencies that are going to activate our ability to transform disease in the body, in the physical body, into a pure light form that could dissolve easily and quickly. It could be emotional instability where the frequency goes so high that those denser, depressive, burdensome emotions can just melt away like that, allowing us to emotionally express and manage our emotional expression in a much lighter, easier way. And then how about mental health? Wow. It's like somebody's taken our mind like a dish rag and it's just squeezing out the last drop of sensibility. And so we don't know, we've never had to manage this much light flooding into the earth right now. And then you add those solar flares that are coming in to help boost the light codes, to help activate our DNA more, then that's what they're saying, is that we have a high probability of miracles happening for you and for me and for our loved ones around us. So I was kind of walking down the stairs. I've got my notes here. And I was saying, well, what about disease? Like how can these miracles impact disease? So as you know, my name is Nancy. I am a psychic healer, have been a psychic development teacher for 30 years, but I'm a retired registered nurse. So I worked in intensive care for a long, long time. And then I went to hospice for the last 8 years of my career before I retired and started teaching about the frequencies of the human energy field. And that I've done for the last 25 years. All right. So what they said was, they said, when you have a disease, so like, for example, I think it's 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. The very first thing that they wanted to do was they wanted to take a biopsy of the nodule and send it to the lab to see if it was a genetic cancer. So it turned out not to be, but for many of you out there, you've got that genetic gene that predisposes you for a higher chance of getting breast cancer or other types of cancers. So what they said was, when you can have light, greater amounts of light, higher frequencies, healing frequencies, that maybe those genetic cancer codes, we'll just call them, they get disengaged, or they get that it gets flipped back into a dormant state. Or let's say that the cancer has come to the surface and the light starts to raise the frequency, and the cancer cannot survive in that frequency. So this is basically what they're talking about. And what they're saying is, yeah, don't expect it for the future. What they're telling me is that people are already having different levels of miracles. Now, I'm talking about some pretty heavy duty health issues. However, there's lots of little ways that miracles happen all the time, where it's just this sudden appearance of maybe something that you thought about that you never thought was possible for you, and it just lands in your lap, or someone knocks on your front door. I love the experience of being hungry for a pizza, but it's late and you don't want to go out and get it, and you don't want to have it delivered, and it's just too much work. And then the neighbor knocks on the door and says, hey, they accidentally delivered 2 pizzas for my wife and I, and there's no way we're going to be able to eat both. Do you want one? So those are in some ways also considered miracles, where the frequency was in such a place that we could manifest, we could send that frequency out, and it can come back to us quickly as a miracle. So, stories. Let me just find my stories. So again, let me read what a miracle is: an occurrence all at once, above nature, above man, that is an intervention of power that is not limited by the laws of matter and the mind, a power that can interrupt the fixed laws that govern our movements, a supernatural power. And so you might say, I don't know how to define what just happened, but I'm going to take it as a miracle. No, it's like, I don't care what anybody else says, I'm going to take it as a miracle. So there was, and I think you can still find it on YouTube, and I'm not even quite sure how I found it, but it's a Greg Braden video where Greg Braden went to this hospital where it was called an energy hospital. I remember it was in Beijing, China. And so Greg Braden, I don't know if he was actually there or he was referring to this video, but in the video, it shows an ultrasound that is focused on this tumor. And then in this tumor, you've got people standing around. It looks almost like a surgical table. And they start singing or chanting with the intention to raise the frequency. And they keep chanting and raising the frequency and chanting and raising the frequency. And on the ultrasound, you can literally see it. It's a black and white film. You can see the tumor shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink until there's almost like this little spark of this last gasp of light. And then the tumor is completely gone. And so they literally opened up this energy hospital and they would admit patients, and this is what they would do to heal illnesses. Now, I did go to Beijing, China, and I did investigate and look into it because I really, as a nurse, I wanted to visit this hospital, and I found it was closed down by the government. So I'm not quite sure why. But anyway, look it up. Greg Braden, it might even be on his page, but you can also do a search engine and ask about it. I bet it'll show up for you. All right. Then for me personally, now this is a miracle, but this particular miracle for me did not happen overnight. As a matter of fact, it happened over a period of about 7 years. And so maybe we could describe it as a lot of little miracles that added up to a big miracle. So when I was born, I experienced, probably I was less than 2 months old. I had some type of abscess or infection in my left hip. So I'm this teeny tiny little baby, had to go into the hospital, be put on antibiotics. But what ended up happening was, your bones are soft, that my bones in my left hip became deformed. So my left leg became shorter. My ability, they thought that I could never walk. They never thought I could birth children naturally. And I was able to walk and birth children naturally. But my left hip, man, if it got activated in pain, it could just ache and ache and ache forever and for hours and days. And so at some point, as I became more confident as a healer, I just closed my eyes and I just started imagining that left hip. So if you think of your hips like this, and where my fingers are is where it kind of arches, it comes around and cradles above your legs, like that. Well, in my left hip, it was pronated, meaning it was turned too far inward. So that would have thrown off my hip. And sometimes it felt like my femur bone was floating in there. So I was probably, I'm 65 now, so probably when I just started my 40s. So I was quite worried about my bones and if my left hip bone was going to be able to save me, support me in the long term as I aged. All right, so I just started working on it, and I just would run golden healing energy through it, and I would pretend that it was softening. I would pretend and imagine that the bone was softening and that I could just work it a little bit to get it to unfold, to uncurl. And then I would forget about it for a couple of months until it would start to ache again. And then I would go back and I would bring in some more golden energy, and I would pretend and imagine I was softening it, and then I would be straightening it out a little bit. There were times where it did feel like the femur bone was moving out. So I pretended that I could tighten up the ligaments. And I'd look up. I am a nurse, so I happen to know anatomy and physiology. But even if you don't, you can look up online and to see all the little bits there. So it took about 7 or 8 years. I was starting to have some back issues, and I went to a chiropractor who wanted to take x-rays. So I informed the chiropractor that my left hip is off, so I'm suspecting that it's caused my back and maybe caused a curvature in my spine. And you want to know something? There was literally no deforming hip on that left side or the right side, and even the hips were completely well balanced. And so he showed me the pictures. He said, well, based on what you said, I would have expected your left hip to look pretty bad, but it's fine. And so that's when I realized that, yeah, I worked on it little bits at a time, and it shifted little bits at a time. But then my hips are now still at 65 years old, holding well. I never have hip pain anymore. And so I wanted to share that with you. It's possible for you too to focus on any part of your body and bring in gold or silver or diamond or blue or whatever color you're called to bring in. All right. Now, this is where some of these stories really blew my mind. So I'll save the best for last. But there was one particular woman. She was a student. She was in class. There were about 20 people in the classroom, and they were learning how to do what we call rose healings, where you put the essence of yourself into a rose and you ground it and gold it and, bring it up to a higher frequency so that it can heal. And she had gotten a call on the lunch break, or her husband had phoned her, and he said, look, I went to my doctor's appointment and they just got the results back. They just called me and I've got liver cancer. Well, you can imagine it was very traumatic for her. She starts crying. I'm asking her what's wrong. She shares with the class. And I said, oh, absolutely. You need to go and you need to go be with your husband. But then as she was about ready to head out the door, I said, would you or would your husband be okay if our class did a group healing for your husband and his liver cancer? And she said, oh, I would love it. She called him. He said he would love it. And she was off and on her way. Now, the class and I got together and we just focused healing energy on his liver cancer. So he's gotten the call. It happens to be a Saturday. The doctor wants him to come in on Monday to do more tests, and then they will determine what kind of treatment plan they're going to come up with. So they did an ultrasound, and the cancer was gone. It was 100% gone. That's a miracle, right? But it didn't just happen while he was eating potato chips and watching a Netflix movie. You know, it didn't just happen that way. There was this energy frequency, just like Greg Braden talking about raising the frequency, and the tumor dissolved. Now, the wife did come back later and say, well, it was really a tiny bit of cancer. It's like, it's still a miracle. Even if it's a tiny cancer, it's still a miracle. All right, so I have another story. And why am I sharing this with you? Because what was my first question? Do you believe in miracles? And then what was my first suggestion? If you don't believe in miracles, you just might want to rethink this, because miracles are going to begin to happen in an abundant way. And when the star beings and other light beings and angels, when I'm asking them, I'm asking my higher self, I'm asking my guides, healing guides, and they're like, oh yeah, expect miracles. And in our culture, we've kind of forgotten, right, how to expect miracles. All right, heart disease. So I was an open heart recovery nurse. So if you've ever had open heart surgery, or you have a loved one had open heart surgery and they're in the operating room with these brilliant heart surgeons we have, and then they say, okay, your loved one has a room now, or you have a room now. If you came into that room and the nurse is there caring for your loved one, that would have been me. So I would have been the nurse to receive you or your loved one into that room. Bottom line, I was very familiar with hearts. I was an open heart recovery nurse, so I was very familiar with hearts. All right. So this woman phones me at my office and she said, could you recommend a cardiologist for me? And I said, do you know what I do? And she said, oh, I definitely know what you do. You know that I'm a healer, right? And that I can read energy fields. Yes. Well, then why are you asking me for a reference to a cardiologist? She goes, well, I heard that you used to be an open heart recovery nurse, and because you're spiritual, I trust your opinion more. So she shares with me the story that she ended up with chest pain, ended up in the ER. They wanted to hospitalize her because she was really on the verge of having a heart attack. She got too scared. She left against medical advice. She calls me. And of course, I'm like, oh, you've got to get back to the hospital. She said, I'm not doing it. Anyway, I gave her 3 names. She ends up going back. They end up doing a heart catheterization to see the blockages in her heart. She had 3 blockages in her heart. They verified it. She was going to have stents put in the vessels to help open up the blockages so the blood flow could get back to those other areas of the heart. But before she was going to have the stents put in, she called me and said, would you mind helping me with some relaxation techniques? So she came in, and so I taught her how to ground and how to breathe and how to release stress. But then before she left, I said, I know a lot about hearts. Would you mind if I played a little bit with running some healing energy, which I used gold, healing energy through your cardiac vessels, the coronary arteries in your heart? And she said, no, not at all. Anyway, that's what I did. And she went the next day back and she got hospitalized. They've got the surgical team waiting because at the time it was very unusual to put stents in 3 vessels. Anyway, they've got the whole team around. If you've ever had a heart catheterization or stent, you know what I'm talking about. It's a full room. And the moment they went to light up her coronary arteries, all the arteries were clear. 100% clear. Now, she didn't understand what was happening except that the cardiologist was looking at the screen, looking at the team of people, looking back at the screen and saying, something's wrong. Something's terribly wrong. And she got a little upset thinking something's really terribly wrong. He pulls up the other x-rays to find out, nope, those blockages were there. What happened to the blockages? So when she called me, I said, you did tell them what you did, didn't you? And she said, nope. And I said, you didn't share with them that you had an energy healing? No, because my family would disown me. They're very religious. And if they thought that I came to see a healer, they would never speak to me again. And I practically begged her. I said, look, I know these cardiologists. Please let me talk to them. Because, hey, we wouldn't want the cardiologist to think that they missed something. And then they're left wondering what happened. But it was energy. It was pure energy. I helped raise the frequency of the coronary arteries. I did pass through some golden energy through the little blockage parts of it. And it dissolved the blocked arteries. Have I had a chance to do more of those? No. And yeah, I wish she would have been willing. I've seen her a few times since, and her heart's been fine ever since then. But she just still said she wouldn't be able to speak up about it. But all right, here's my last story. And I know you all are like, wow. Let me ask you, would you share with the doctor what you had done? And you have to remember this was 20 years ago. Would you have shared with your doctor that you had gone to see a psychic healer? Maybe. In this next story, the woman did go to her doctor, and the woman did tell her doctor, and her doctor wanted to talk to me. So, in this next story, there was a woman who phoned me. Now, I was a hospice nurse at the time. And she had phoned me and she wanted to know if I could do a healing for her. She said, my doctor's put me on hospice, and but I'm not ready to die. And I want to know if you could help me because I'm really having a lot of trouble breathing. Now, she hadn't told me a lot about where the cancer was. She just said, I'm having trouble breathing. And I said, well, you do know that I just want to stress that I can probably help relieve some of the uncomfortable symptoms, but I'm probably not going to be able to heal the cancer. I just want to make this very, very clear. And this was actually the first major miracle that I witnessed. But anyway, she said, oh, I know that. I don't expect anything, but I do just want to feel a little bit better. I want to be able to feel like I can breathe. So she comes in to my office, and I did the normal things that I always do. She's sitting in front of me, and I have the type of clairvoyance where I can look inside your body like a human x-ray machine or MRI. And so I always do this. I always scan, and then I will start to work. I'll let Spirit kind of guide me what direction to go. Well, Spirit guided me to go to her second chakra, which is where her uterus is located. And there was a block of energy there. So I use the techniques that I teach my students as well. It's a simple technique. I didn't do any fancy stuff. And as I was working on this symbol of stuck energy, suddenly it was like the room, there was this sound in the room, like a buzzing or a high-pitched sound, and then suddenly I don't know if you've ever been like on a Ferris wheel or you're on a mountaintop and you're like you're just like, oh my gosh, or you've just done one of those roads you're driving and you feel like your stomach drops out. It kind of felt like that. And then suddenly, Mother Mary came through the wall. She's in front of me. She comes through the wall and she's standing there. And I'm looking at her like, and I said telepathically, "You're Mother Mary." And she said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "What are you doing here?" And now I'm talking telepathically. And she said, "I would like for you to ask this person if I can do a healing on her." Well, you have to understand, I was going to have to admit that I could see Mother Mary, and I didn't realize that, I don't know, I didn't realize that Mother Mary would come into my office. I thought Mother Mary just shows up for big miracles. I mean, this is a big miracle. But I said to the client, "Mary's here." And she said, "Oh, okay. Who's Mary?" And I said, "Jesus' mom." And she goes, "Oh, okay." And I said, "And she would like to offer a healing for you." "Okay," she said. And so this is what my psychic vision, sighted vision showed me. Mother Mary got down on her knees, and I could see Mother Mary's hands moving around the outside of this woman's auric field. I could see light coming out of Mother Mary's hands. And she was just working all over. And then she stood up and she was moving her hands above this woman's head. And I was just in awe, as you can imagine. And then Mother Mary stopped and she stood off to the side and she said to me, "You may proceed to give her some information about what you witnessed and what you see in the energy field, but she will not require any more healing today." And I was like, okay. So we just spent a little extra time, maybe another 5 or 10 minutes, kind of dialoguing. And then the woman just burst into tears and she said, "I'm healed." And she goes, "You healed me." And I said, "Well, I'm a good healer, but I'm not that good. I didn't call Mother Mary in. You had to have called Mother Mary in." And she said, "Well, in the church that I belong to, we work with Jesus, but we don't work with Mary. So I would never have called Mary in." And I'm like, "You had to have done something." And she goes, "Well, this morning when I was getting ready, I did ask for a miracle." There you go. She asked for a miracle. All right. So she leaves my office. I probably sat there for the next couple of hours because my mind as a nurse, I was so blown away. So apparently she calls her oncologist and she wants a full MRI scan done. Oh, I forgot to tell you. What she told me was that her cancer, remember I said I saw something in the uterus? So she had cancer of the uterus that had spread to her liver, it had spread to her lungs, it had spread to her bones, and it had spread to her brain. All right? She had cancer everywhere. So when she goes back to her oncologist, he said, "You're in denial. You are not willing to admit that you're dying. And no, I'm not going to do another MRI. It's not justified. You're on hospice. We can't do this." She badgered him for a month to do, because she could tell she felt different. So finally he thought, the only way we're going to be able to do this is just to do this. And do you know, they did a full body scan. She actually showed me the imagery from the full body scan. There was not one speck of cancer left. Not one. So needless to say, my office practice got really busy after that because people had heard Mother Mary came in and there was a miracle that happened and they wanted miracles in their own life. And what I'm going to tell you is it's never happened like that before. So the big surprise that happened was the day that the oncologist phoned me and asked me to share with him the story, the experience that had happened for his patient. And he really considered himself a man of faith. He was a very devoted Catholic, and he loved it. And the other thing is, the whole thing had been on a cassette tape recorder. This is how long ago it was. And he was able to hear the cassette recorder where I was like, Mother Mary's here. Like, he could tell I was just as surprised as his patient was. And so he referred a lot of patients to me as well. It was quite a turning point for me as a registered nurse and as a psychic healer, that I started to get a lot of referrals from the area that I live in. But I will tell you, I don't believe that it's me personally that has this ability and this capacity to perform miracles. There's not even one sliver of a belief in me that believes that. I believe that that miracle creating opportunity is between you and your soul and your conversations with the God of your heart, your desire to ask for miracles, your desire to make life choices, to do things differently. And I do believe that your spirit gets you right to the right person that you're supposed to go visit, that you're supposed to go see. But if I can leave you with anything about energetic quantum healing that we're really moving into right now, that as the frequency goes up, there's going to be natural medical miracles. There's going to be natural emotional stability, natural mental stability and mental health. I believe this deep in my soul, and I've worked with enough health issues to have 100% confidence in that. So the blue light flood has been already coming in. The blue light code started coming in like a whiteout snowstorm on October 6th, and this is not gonna let up until mid-year in 2025. All of those light codes are bringing through the possibilities of probabilities of rapid change, rapid growth, rapid consciousness awakening, and miracles. So I hope you enjoyed the stories, and get ready to believe in miracles. Get ready to believe in miracles, because the blue star beings in our galactic focus are assuring us that miracles are coming. It's going to really inspire, uplift, and help us have hope again, which is what we really need. Now, I just want to say, in a couple of hours from now, I'm doing my first Blue Light Awakening series live on Zoom. But even if you miss it on Saturday, that recording is still going to be available. But for the next 30 days, we'll close registration next week. But for the next 30 days, we're going to be riding these waves, and we're going to be expanding the light and learning how to read and work with your own light codes of healing. So take a look at the link in the segment here, and I look forward to working with you at any level, even if it's just to read your comments on the YouTube channel. All right, everyone, take care and share with me the miracles that you've experienced, because I love reading about miracles. All right, take care. Bye-bye.